Hello everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Think Tank. I want to talk about Detroit. Now, it's all over the news that Detroit is filing for bankruptcy. Now, this was not exactly a jaw-dropping moment. I mean, it was something that was expected. Now, if you're wondering why it happened, well, they were spending way too much money. Eventually, they ran out of money, and they borrowed money. Eventually, the lender said, no more. Now, what happens is they can't get any more money. Now, why are they running out of money? It's simple. What happened in Detroit was something called the Great White Flight. Now, I visited Johannesburg a while ago, and something very similar happened. The Central Business District in Johannesburg was amongst the best, the most successful. It was a place where people wanted to move to. It was a bustling businesses that were making money. It was doing well. And what happened was it was apartheid. Right after that, the whole city went in decay. It had a lot of violence, drugs, homicides, and they left. The Great White Flight, where did they go to? They went to the suburbs. Now you can see the suburbs are really picturesque. They're nice. They're safer than the CBD, which is amongst one of the most dangerous places in the world to be today. Now, going to New York, which is the reason of the title of this video, Let Detroit Drop Dead? Well, in 1975, New York was facing a similar situation to Detroit. They were teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, big government spending too much money, public sector unions, overinflated salaries, big fat cat pensioners, these inflated pensions, high taxes, high regulations. And then what happened was they ran out of money, and then they borrowed money. The bank said, no more. So what else are they going to do? They knock on the door of the feds and say, look, we need a bailout. And they replied, nothing doing. This prompted a very famous front page New York Daily News headline, Ford to New York, drop dead. Now, of course, he didn't say that, but they denied the bailout. And eventually they got it. Now, this was a terrible time, similar to Detroit. As a matter of fact, Howard Cosell, who was the broadcaster of the New York Yankees, he was looking down through the camera of the blimp in extreme decay. And Cosell looked down and he was like, what's wrong with these people? Why are they burning their houses? I mean, that's how bad it was. Houses were being burned to collect insurance. There was no other way to make money from this real estate that was there. So, I mean, it was a terrible, terrible time. But eventually they got the money. Now the question is, will Detroit get a bailout? And I certainly hope not. Because you know what's going to happen. If they get the bailout, it's just throwing more good money after bad. And this is how it affects us. Yeah, if Detroit deals with their own issues, it's not a taxpayer issue, but bailout means a taxpayer issue. They'll either print the money, or they're going to take money from our taxes. And for what? You know, to continue this theft? This is a nationwide crisis. I mean, our manufacturing base has been deteriorated. And this is happening all over the country. Detroit is just a message that we have to bring back manufacturing to this country, but we can't do it. We can't do it in the atmosphere of high regulations, high taxation, and big government. I mean, that's the reason why the manufacturing capacity of this country has gone where it is now. I mean, 24% of GDP in the 1950s was manufacturing, and now it's only 11%. I mean, you could just look at the numbers. It's really spiraling downward. And I mean, you could just see Detroit is such a disaster. I mean, if you look in the 1950s, if you look at 1950, the population of the United States was around 150 million people. And In 1950, the population of Detroit peaked at around 1.8 million. Now the population of the United States has more than doubled since then. But yet the population of Detroit plummeted to around 700,000. So imagine if the population was stagnant in the United States as a whole, but it wasn't. It more than doubled. And look at the population of Detroit. Continues to plummet despite the increase in population of the country itself. I mean, it's such a destructive disaster. And the reason it is, and why did Detroit fail? Massive big government, overinflated salaries for the public sector unions, unions trading favors with politicians, politicians trading favors with unions. You have, the result is extremely corrupt politicians, high taxation, high regulations. Whoever's not a part of this union system and government working system have to pay the bill. And they got out of Dodge. People vote with their feet. They left. And the unequivocal proof that small government works, when you lower taxes, lower regulations, it works. Look at Texas, look at Nevada, look at Florida. Why are they doing much better than a model of Detroit? In California, you see cities going bankrupt. This is a place with big government, high taxes, high regulations. I mean, it's incredible. And it's kind of interesting. I did a video a while back called Can Socialism Work? And if you just watch the video, you can see people arguing for socialism. I mean, if Detroit is an unequivocal proof that socialism is a miserable failure for a country, then I don't know what is. And if you argue with these people, you'll always hear the same thing. Oh, the people, the poor. You look at the rich, they have it so well. The poor people don't have. But my question is to them, look at socialism. It's not about the poor. And this is a very important point I want to make. I haven't heard this being made before. Socialists are the biggest capitalists. But the difference is, they want capitalism only for themselves. They don't want it for the masses. If you're outside the union system, if you're outside the political system, you have to fund it. What a bunch of hypocrites. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And this is why Detroit is in the mess that it's in. A product of socialism are these unions. Big government. Socialism needs to be enforced. Everywhere you have socialism, you have big government and you have public sector unions. So if you confront these public sector unions, these workers, and say, you know what, I want to save the city of Detroit. Take a pay cut. Take a pension cut. We can't pay this amount of money. You know what they'll tell you? They'll laugh at you. They want to make as much money as they can. They want to benefit themselves. That's what capitalism is. If everybody wants to benefit themselves, that's the brilliance of Adam Smith. Then indirectly, others benefit. The problem with Detroit is that you have a socialist model. And I'd love to see, please leave comments, I'd love to see a socialist argue that socialism isn't to blame. I'd just love to see that one. Because, I mean, and if you're going to make an argument, please do it intelligently. I want you to show how socialism is not the problem with Detroit. That socialism did not cause the meltdown in Detroit. Because it is socialism 101. Detroit is a perfect example why socialism has destroyed a city. Anyway, this is a very important situation. It's also a very scary situation because this may happen to other cities. You have cities like Philadelphia, like Baltimore, that are also facing problems. I mean, this is just the beginning. You know, it's the same socialist model that these states have. And then, of course, you have to look at the automotive industry. I mean, what a disaster. Why did they fail? Simple. They failed because they couldn't compete with the Japanese, who don't have all this government, this high regulations, all these laws, these labor laws, pensions. So Detroit couldn't compete. How could they compete? How could they compete with the Japanese who are building a car at a lower price? So they went bankrupt. That's what happened. So you have two things happening at the same time. I mean, you have the whole base of Detroit, which is the automotive industry, in decay. And at the same time, you have the whole city itself that's being run in a socialist model with these unions, overinflated salaries and overinflated pensions. There's just no money left. It's the taxpayer that has to pay for it. Taxpayer leaves, there's no one else to fund it. So I would like to know what you think. Do you think it's a drop-dead moment for Detroit, such as it was in New York in 1975? I would like to know what you think. Please leave your comments, and thank you for tuning in.